Well, welcome back for another episode of the Chamber Podcast. My name is Rob Johnson, and we have another great show for you today. Joining me in studio is John Manwiller. He's a financial advisor with Edward Jones. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So let's dive into a little bit of where the market and economy is at right now. Then I want to get into why you do this. So we'll start with where things are at right now. So when people are coming to you right now to invest, obviously we're in a new administration right now. We're on hopefully the end of this massive inflation cycle that we've seen the last 3 years. What are you telling people to do?
Well, it's a question that a lot of people ask when they first come in, and they say, what's the market going to do for the next 4 years? And my favorite answer is, I left my crystal ball at home this morning. I think anybody who tells you exactly what the market's going to do is probably selling you something. I'm optimistic, though. I'm excited about the future of the market and investing for the future. I guess we'll see what happens. But, the biggest thing that the stock market doesn't like is uncertainty. And I guess the good thing about this new administration is we've already had a Trump presidency once before, and the stock market did really well, I guess, up until COVID, right, which we couldn't have predicted. But we'll see what happens for the next 4 years.
And when you're walking people through that process, like, where do you start? How do you get somebody from, they walk in your office, they have, a sum of money to invest, to here's the plan that we're going to execute now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of it has to do with where that person is in their stage of life, in their financial situation. So I sit down with people and I look at, where is all of your money? How much do you make? How long do you have until retirement? What's your risk tolerance? And then we take into account things like, what's your Social Security going to be? What is inflation going to be? And then everybody is in a different situation, and my recommendation is different for everybody. So I think some investors have like cookie cutter portfolios that they just slap everybody into, and I tend to be a little bit more tailored with my clients to try to fit something specific to their situation. Because if you're 25 and investing for 45 years until you retire, it's going to be very different than if you're 65 and retiring today.
Yeah. On that subject, how do people pick an advisor? Because on the surface, it's like, well, all financial advisors are the same. And then you go a layer deeper and you're like, well, are they a fiduciary? Mm-hmm. Do they have a track record of success, or at least solid communication when markets slide? Like, how do people go about even selecting the right person to manage their money?
I think in a lot of cases, it's about who you know. A lot of cases, you ask your friend, who do you work with? Yeah. And they say, well, I really like this guy. And so I think that this whole business is on building trust with people and generating referrals and getting to know people. And you're right, people want to work with somebody who's like-minded and maybe in a similar stage of life as them. And so I tend to get more clients that are younger investors, young families that want to talk about retirement, long-term retirement planning, life insurance, 529s, education savings for kids. There's a lot of things to talk about with young investors.
Yeah. And have you found that that's where your clientele matches up, as people that are in a similar, life stage as you?
Yeah. And the thing I always tell people, because I was telling you before the show started, when I first started with Edward Jones, it was right out of college. I was 19 years old. People were like, what do you know about money? And I would always tell them, well, it's kind of like when you work with a doctor. If you get a doctor who's 60 years old and he's going to retire in a few years, you're going to have to go find a new one. But the nice thing about working with me is I'm going to get you all the way to and maybe even through retirement. I'm going to be doing this for a long time.
That's a great answer. Did anyone ever, discourage you in terms of, well, you're 19, you don't know anything about money?
Yeah, a lot of times the first question out of people's mouths would be, how old are you? Yeah. And so my standard response was, well, how old do you think I am? Yeah. And then they'd be like, I don't know, 25. And I'd be like, you're close. And I just kind of move on from there.
You're close you're off by a margin of 6, but yeah, you're right on the money. So let's walk backwards a little bit. So you start with Edward Jones when you were 19, came there out of college, right?
That's correct.
So why that path?
Yeah, that's a good question. My grandma worked for Edward Jones. And when I first, let me back up even a little further. I was homeschooled all the way through high school, which allowed me and my brothers, I've got 5 brothers, and it allowed us to get ahead a little bit. So I actually started college when I was 16 and then got my bachelor's when I was 19. So it was a little bit of an accelerated path. And so when I first started college, I knew I needed to figure out what was this all building up toward. So I was shadowing a couple of different professions, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And my grandma said, well, you ought to come shadow the financial advisor with Edward Jones that I work for. She was an assistant in an Edward Jones office at the time. And I was like, that sounds super boring, and I don't think that, whatever. I guess I'll go humor grandma, right? So I went and I sat in on some appointments with the financial advisor. His name is Jeremy. He's in Troy with Edward Jones, if you're watching this, hey. And I just loved seeing the way that he was able to help people. My dad's a pastor, and so I grew up seeing the way that he added value to people's lives and cared for them spiritually. And I felt like God was calling me to add value to people's lives and take care of their needs financially and use it as a ministry. So that's what got me interested in the first place. So really, this has been my dream job since I was 16.
You mentioned that there is a kind of a Christian-driven designation that you have. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's a CKA. It stands for Certified Kingdom Advisor, and it's something that I got a year or two ago. And Kingdom Advisors is a group of Christian financial advisors and attorneys and CPAs that look at what does the Bible say about money and money management. And I actually just made a YouTube video about that recently. So one of my focuses is on helping people align their investing with their values. And so if you are a Christian, we actually have faith-based investments at Edward Jones, where if you don't want to own, I call them sin stocks, companies that are involved with pornography or abortion or alcohol, gambling, tobacco, that kind of thing. That's something I can help with.
I've never heard that before, sin stocks.
Yeah.
That completely makes sense. So how old are you now?
26.
I'm not
how old do you think I am?
I'm not going to guess. I'm not going to guess. Sorry. So
I don't mind as much now.
That's good. So you've been in the game 7 years?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. And then what's it been like going from 19 to 26? What are a couple things that you've learned that maybe you thought was going to be a little bit differently, or just things that you have a different perspective on now?
Yeah, this business was a real grind on the front end, trying to build a business. Because when I first started, I didn't have any clients. I didn't even have an office. I was working out of the back of somebody else's office. Well, he didn't have any space for me, so I'd have to literally wait till he went home. And then I would go in and pop on his computer and enter all my data and stuff. So when I first started, it was all door knocking. That's what Edward Jones said was the way to build your business. So my first year with Edward Jones, I knocked on over 10,000 doors around Brighton, just pounding the pavement and handing out my business card. And then COVID hit, and I had to pivot and figure out how to keep building my business without being able to go door knocking. And I guess you said, what has changed over the last 7 years? Now I've gotten to the point where it's referral driven and I don't have to be out prospecting all the time, which is really nice because when I first got started at 19, I was single, I didn't have any kids, and I really felt like if I can work really hard now, I'll be able to build something that will pay off once I have a wife and kids. And now I do. I think I was just telling you I've got a baby girl due in May, and so it's really nice to be able to have that already built.
Well, congratulations on that, and certainly an exciting period of your life to be in. So I want to get a little bit deeper into what you recommend people do when they first start. So one, how much money should they have before they come see a financial advisor? And then where do they go from there? There's
an old proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is today. And so the answer to the question, how much money do you need to work with a financial advisor? There is no such dollar amount. I don't have a minimum in order to work with somebody. So I would say it's more about starting as soon as you can.
Yeah.
If you look at a time value of money calculator and you look at what if I invest $100 a month from the time I'm 20 years old until I'm 65 and I get S&P 500 returns on average, it turns into over $1 million. But then if you wait 5 years, it cuts out hundreds of thousands of dollars of growth. So I would just encourage people start as soon as you can.
Magic of compound interest.
Albert Einstein says it's the most powerful force in the universe.
Yeah, and he would know.
He would know. He worked with a lot of powerful things.
He would know. So I want to go back to when you started with Edward Jones, because I remember when I was younger, I think I was probably right around 20, I had looked at working at Edward Jones back when I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. Apparently at 19, you already had that solved, so congrats on that. If memory serves, it's kind of like sliding scale where like you have a set a portion of money that they give you, and then every year it drops in hopes that your commission or whatever your fee is takes the place of that salary. Was it still like that?
Yeah. They started me off with a salary of $40,000 right out of college.
Yep.
And then each year they would cut that by a quarter. And the idea was that hopefully the revenue that I was generating was going to replace it. And so it definitely lights a fire under you because you can see exactly when your salary is going to get cut again.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I better replace that.
Yeah, knock on some more doors.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was about a year in, I did the math of how many doors I'd knocked on and how many dollars I had brought in for assets under management. And it was about $500 per door. And so at the time, a Roth IRA limit was $500 a month or $6,000 a year.
Yeah.
It's gone up since then. But I just, I did that math and I was like, hey, every time I knock on a door, I'm bringing in $500. Whether they, curse me off the porch or whether they open $1 million account, I just, I'm a big baseball fan, so I just looked at it like a batting average.
Yeah. And was there ever like a surprise where you knocked on someone's door and they're like, hey, you know what, John, I do have $1 million that I want to, give you.
Yeah. Some of my best clients came from that.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And what year was that?
2019.
It's so funny to think that door knocking and that, direct sales approach would be effective,
I always tell people it's not efficient, but it is effective. Because like I said at the very beginning of this show, this business is all about building trust with people. And if I am cold connecting you on LinkedIn or if I'm cold calling you, it's hard to build that trust versus if I can see you face to face.
And then if someone sits down with you and they say, hey, John, I got 3 advisors I'm looking at, you're one of them, what's a differentiator?
I always tell people you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket, but you do want to have all your chickens on the same farm. And what I mean by that is you don't want to put it all in one stock, but if you have 3 financial advisors, here's why I think that's maybe not the best idea. If I, as your financial advisor, have you in stocks A, B, and C, and then your second advisor has you in stocks C, D, and E, well, now we're actually overlapping on C, and you're actually less diversified. So I guess I would say find the one that you want to work with the most and stick with that one.
Yeah. I love that. So if people do want to work with you, if they want to know a little bit more about how to invest, and I like what you said about you don't really need a minimum, because when I first started investing when I was, I think I told you when I was 21, the first person I went to said it's a $50,000 minimum. Mm-hmm. And when I was 21, I did not have $50,000.
Yeah.
So I was a little discouraged. So I was like, I'm just going to learn it on my own. So I've been self-managed since I was 21 because of that. So I love to hear that, there's no minimum, especially if someone's, listening and they're younger and just getting in the game, because it's so important. Compound interest is truly magical. I show it to all my new employees here when I give them a primer on the investments and how our 401k works and all of that. And, they're blown away because it's, stuff most of them have not been taught before.
It bothers me when people have minimums like that because you went and did it on your own, but a lot of people just get discouraged and never start saving at all. And so it really hinders people from being able to access investing, which has changed a lot in the last few years. Right now, people have Robinhood and E-Trade and things on their phones.
For sure, absolutely. But even that, it's such a playing the single stock game like that. It pays to have somebody like you in their corner. Navigating them through, best practices, and maybe you shouldn't dump everything into Tesla this week, or Bitcoin. So, all right, very good, John. So if someone wants to work with you, what's your preferred method of them reaching out to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. If you want to reach out to me, go to my website. You can send me an email, give me a phone call.
All right.
Even if you don't have anything to start with.
Love it. All right, John. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and exciting to learn about the business, and good to know that there's good financial advisors out there helping people make the right moves.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Chamber Podcast. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Apart from that, take care.